Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and for the last 20 years, I have been working in schools, supporting teachers to build inclusive classrooms. Through A Kid's Life podcast, my goal is to help us adults better understand the complexities of life as a kid. My guests and I share stories, reflections, and simple strategies to support kids of all needs as they walk through life. So whether you're looking for inspiration, direction, guidance, tips, or just a laugh, A Kid's Life podcast is the place for you. Enjoy. Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and I wanted to bring you something today that I was exposed to many years ago through my work in one of my local primary schools, and that was the work of story dogs. And Story Dogs, it's based on a successful American literacy program, which is all about reading education assistance dogs, which I think is very cleverly acronymed by READ. Very well done. It was launched back in 1999, which seems like forever ago, in Utah. And it was a really comprehensive literacy program that was built around children and young adults, young adolescents, and helping them to be able to read through the support of dogs. Now, that sounds a bit strange maybe for some people. How does a dog teach a child how to read? But we'll get into that. But it's really funny. I'm going to speak to one of the co-founders, Janine Sigley, shortly. But it's a 100% volunteer-driven program, which really is amazing considering they're in over 300 primary schools across Australia. Now, for me, it's really quite funny even to be talking about dogs because I've been known to say I would rather have another child, than have a dog in my life. I know I could see Janine's face before I introduced her. Her eyes just widened like, what? It was always a joke that I just don't get why people love dogs. I didn't get dog ownership. I'd go to markets and see all these crazy things for dogs with, pearly leads and all this. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, why would you even bother? So it was something that I knew that dogs were cute and I was happy to sort of look at them being cute, but to actually own one and have to clean up their poo and do all that sort of stuff never interested me. As a kid, I was only ever having, I have a goldfish and a guinea pig. And my goldfish lived in a bowl on top of a speaker in my bedroom, when we had the big boom boxes. So clearly that died. And then a guinea pig was eaten by a rat. And so my early experiences of animals were quite traumatic, which probably leads to why I never wanted any other pets. But that was until I had a daughter who, since she could speak, has always asked if we could have a dog. And I always said, no, I will have another child. You will have another brother or sister before we ever get a dog. And her persistence is absolutely impressive. And it took 9 years because the first 2 years of her life, she couldn't speak. So it took her 9 years to, get to a point where I sort of crumbled and I welcomed a dog into our lives. And that was only this year. And it was a little Jack Russell pup, little buddy. And I am going to stand here and say that my not want to have a dog my entire life completely changed the minute I saw my little Jack Russell pup look at me. And from that moment on, yes, I've even had portraits done of my family with my little Jack Russell, and I adore him and love him so much. So I will put hand on heart. I am sorry to all the dog owners I have judged my entire life. I understand and I can actually see the benefits to your mental well-being, your physical well-being. Oh my gosh, and just bringing calm into your life by having a dog. So this whole story and backstory about why I'm so excited to speak to Janine, because I now understand firsthand without judgment why dogs are so important in everybody's life, including my own. So I was fortunate a few years ago to see story dogs in action in the school, like I said. And it was just amazing to see how children who usually were classified as being quite hyperactive or couldn't read become so calm and just read to these beautiful little puppies. So I welcome Janine Sigley to the Kids Life podcast. And Janine, I'm so sorry for giving you a little heart palpitation in the lead up when I said I don't understand why people would want dogs. Welcome.
Good morning, Angela. Yes, you did. It was, oh my goodness, I'm on the wrong program.
I should have told you that prior to us connecting, but I like seeing where my podcasts go. Yeah, so story dogs, just for listeners, can you tell us a little bit about what Story Dogs is? It's pretty self-explanatory in its title, but it's so much more powerful than what the title says.
Sure. So Story Dogs is a reading support program for primary school children, and we take dogs into schools and help children learn to read. But the magic happens with the dog coming into school and the child coming out of the classroom and sitting one-on-one for about 20 minutes with the dog and the handler, and changing that environment for the child and having them go at their own pace and just chilling out with a wonderful dog and a person who's going to listen without judgment is where the magic happens. So every child that we see gets to be with that dog every week at the same time. They look forward to those sessions and they can just relax and go at their own pace and have some fun with a book. So we let the teachers teach and we make the sessions fun and interactive with the dog, and just then the child's self-confidence and literacy skills just keep going up and up.
You made a really interesting point there, if we can just expand on that a little bit, around with no judgment. Now, what do you mean? Can you just expand what you mean by that? Because I don't want to put what I think you're talking about, because, you know, obviously I work with a whole range of children who can really struggle with their learning, and that judgment piece is really interesting. Can you expand on that?
Absolutely. It is an interesting part of the whole story. And it's interesting that we often get either supporters of the program or volunteers of the program come to us because they had such a terrible experience at school. And they can remember standing up in front of the class trying to read because it was their turn, and the teacher said, "You must read," and they couldn't read. And that fear that was in them is still with them today. They can go back to that situation so quickly and feel that fear. So what we're trying to do with our program is take the children out of the classroom to start with. So sitting under a tree on the veranda is so important. That environment is so important. And the dog, of course. So dogs don't mind if they make a mistake. They don't mind if the child goes, "Well, I don't want to read anymore. I'll just pat the dog." Yay, the dog's happy. And it just lets the child know that they're important, they're the centre of this activity, and to go at their pace, and there's no judgment. So if a child doesn't want to read, our volunteers are trained to go, "Okay, let's just read the book together. Let's find out about Pig the Pug or Harry McClary, or, you know, what happens at the end of this book. That's what's important. And let's have fun with the characters, or let's look at the pictures and see what the crazy monkey's doing on the page or whatever, and have a conversation around that, instead of trying to decode every single word and get bogged down in that. Let's just make it fun. And it doesn't matter if you can't do it, because you'll get there in the end, and there's no judgment.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful and calming for a child. And when you said about the fear, I know I see children who really struggle with even just standing in front of a group of their peers, like of their classmates, or, you know, I think kids really know when they're not, you know, proficient readers, and
Absolutely.
don't they? You can see the anxiety and the apprehension to share and to read and to stand up. Like, you know, I speak at conferences all the time, and a lot of people, how do you do that? You know, how do you, that I'm so scared of speaking in front of people. And I often see children who need to stand up and read a passage. They're feeling the same fear. Like, you know, an adult wouldn't be forced up on stage and say, just go for it. You do your preparation and all that. So I see fear all the time in kids. And I think that's really important, a really important point. So you've really talked about judgment and fear, which are pretty big emotions and concepts, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And wanting to do an activity. So when we talk to teachers about benefits of the program, the feedback that we get is the attitude of the children changes. So we take a child that's a reluctant reader, a reluctant learner, because they're fearful and they know that they're lagging behind, or it's so hard for them. And we take those reluctant readers and we then change their attitudes towards reading, because we make it fun. They want to come, so they look forward to something at school. And all of a sudden they're their participation in class increases, their willingness to learn increases. And if you've got a child that wants to learn, well, the sky's the limit, really. It just changes their whole life.
And what part does these gorgeous little puppies, and I can't even believe those words just came out of my mouth. 12 months ago, I may not have said that. No, puppies are gorgeous. What role do they have to play? And you talked about the no judgment, but yeah, what is it about dogs? What is it
That's
about dogs?
That's a good question. Yeah, a good question, because I have people who come to our program who said, oh, look, I've been volunteering at my local school for years now. I go to reading groups and what have you. I know how to do it. Oh, that's all good. I'm experienced in that. I say, yeah, that's good. And then you talk to them, we get them into the program and they do the program with their dog and they come back and go, oh, wow, that was so different. That was so different. The dog makes all the difference. So it's a calming effect. It's a focus. So we get a lot of children that have short attention spans or that are looking everywhere, and we just say, look, just stroke the dog, and they can focus. They can sit still for 20 minutes because of the dog. And we bring it back through the dog. We go, Rover's not running around. This is a time when Rover's just sitting, and this is our activity now. We sit and we'll be here for 20 minutes or so. So we need to just sit, calm down. And the kids, sometimes the teachers say, oh, look, little Johnny, he's a handful. You better watch him. And we get them into our program one-on-one, and they're just angels. They're fine. We never have hardly any behaviour problems because they want to be there, and the dog is the magnet. So it's just that relationship with the dog. So the people who volunteer with us, they almost don't exist. They don't have a name at school. All the kids call out, oh, it's Buddy at school. Here's Buddy, the story dog. And the poor person on the end of the lead goes, oh, what about me?
I'm here too. That's what I feel like in my family nowadays, that I'm like, I'm here too. It's not all about Buddy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you speak about the volunteers. What sort of backgrounds have volunteers got? Do they, what leads them to be a volunteer?
Yeah, we have amazing volunteers who come from all walks of life, mostly women, retired people, a great number of our volunteers, but also women with children at school. And they see the value. They've perhaps brought up their own kids, they're teaching their grandkids to read, and they've got that time, they've got a dog, and so they come to us. But lots of professional people too who know the benefit of reading, been immersed in it the whole life, know that if you have an education, you can get ahead and do the things that you want to do in life. So they see the value of that. And so our volunteers are really amazing because it's a big commitment once a week. For 2 to 3 hours is a big commitment for a volunteer, and we have lots and lots of wonderful volunteers.
So what sort of training process, I'm going to go two streams here, what sort of training programs involved for the volunteers and also for the dogs? Because I'd imagine, I'm thinking of my little buddy, if he went into a school, he would just be like this little energizer thing that would be jumping everywhere and like, oh my gosh, I've got so many play people here. First of all, let's have a chat about the dogs. How do you choose the type of dog? Is there a temperament that's ideal, and what process do they go through?
Sure, yeah, we do put them through an accreditation process, and it is all about the temperament. So our dogs are not therapy dogs in that they haven't gone through months and months and months and months of training. However, they are dogs that are calm, gentle, they're well socialised, they're good around kids. We have an external dog behaviouralist vet come in and do the assessment for us. It's a 10-point assessment, so looking at walking on a loose lead, being happy to be patted, and happy to have kids, hug them or whatever. We don't encourage that, but it happens, of course. And that they're happy in a busy environment with crazy noises and bells going off, things like that. The welfare of the dog is really important, so they have to be happy in the situation and not stressed. But mostly they're backyard dogs that are really well behaved, gentle, and can go through that temperament test that we put them through. Yeah.
I just wondered, do you often get sort of ex-police dogs at all? I'd imagine
ex-guide dogs.
Yeah, ex-guide dogs. Right.
Yeah, we get failed guide dogs quite a lot because their test is so rigorous. And if there's any health issues, we've had a couple with little heart murmurs, and so they're not suitable for guide dogs. They're perfect story dogs because they can come into a school, lay down and listen to a book. easy. For us, it's really good. We take older dogs as well. So therapy dogs, the upper age limit is 10. We will take dogs as long as the vet is happy that they're happy and their welfare is looked after. We'll take them up to, whenever however old they are. So many older dogs that can't do other therapy things come and be story dogs.
Yeah, so we will get to the other part of story dogs, which are the humans. But
Yes.
I'm intrigued. I know your background is really different to what story dogs is. So environmental management, is that right? How did you find your way into this world, the world of story dogs?
Yeah, so I do have an environmental science background, and part of that environmental work was working with volunteers. So I was looking after waterway health, creek health, and I was having the help of volunteers measuring water quality. So I was doing that on the Gold Coast in Queensland, and had lots and lots of volunteers, and I've been managing volunteers for 10 years or so. So I sort of knew that world. And then one day my daughter, she was 10, I think she was, and she said, I really want to volunteer with animals. I want to work with animals, do something. So we hopped on Google, as you do, and you're putting volunteering animals, and up popped the READ program, as you described. And I went, oh, wow. And I was only working 3 days a week at that stage. And I went, oh, wow, we could do this. And I contacted Leah Sheldon, who's also in Mooroombah, and said, hey, how about we do this? And I knew she was a dog lover. She had a big Ridgeback, Simba, who became our first ever story dog. And she went, oh, yeah, let's do it. And I just knew that the synergy. I grew up with dogs. Our kids were surrounded by books, so literacy was important to us. I did a university degree, so I knew that literacy was important. And just seeing the two together, I just went, oh, of course. And I said to Leah, how about we bring it to Australia and let's do it? She went, oh, why not? Okay, let's do it. So, and I knew the volunteer side of it I could manage, even though perhaps it was a different space, but I knew that I could manage that side of it, and I was confident in that part of it. So that's sort of why I flipped to doing story dogs. Yeah.
I know my work in schools as an occupational therapist, I work a lot with children with sensory needs. So they might be children who are very, they get hyper aroused by their environment, or they find certain things in their environment or social interactions or anticipation of, stressful events and things like that really hard. And I know some of the equipment, therapy tools that we use are things to obviously help them calm. And as you're speaking, I just keep thinking about how often now I sit with my puppy if I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'll just stroke him, or I'll actually go out to him and go, come here, mate, and just, give him a little cuddle. So I can really see from a therapeutic benefit how just sitting, patting a dog also distracts you from the overwhelm that you might be feeling at the time. And I think that's where I know I'm really excited by the work that story dogs do, because of that calming element for kids. And I would imagine it's like a little pressing pause moment for them, because sometimes, days can be very stressful, and it just gives them that moment to breathe and just be with another being.
Absolutely. Catch their breath and have no pressure to be doing anything, just they can look at the book if they want, but stroking that wonderful dog and being involved in that dog. And we also get them to interact with the dog, do a trick or cue the dog to do something, and that makes their confidence grow. You should see there, oh wow, I got Buddy to do this or that. They think that they're just fantastic. So, it gives them another skill. One of our volunteers very cleverly had a child that wasn't engaging in the books that he had or whatever. So what he did was he wrote out the steps to teach the dog a trick. And the boy then had to read the instructions, comprehend the instructions, and carry out the instructions. And he was so engaged in this little reading task and little tasks because it was dog-centred, and he was getting, I think it was Marley, to do another trick. And, it was a fantastic way to engage the child. They don't realise that you're engaging this and reading, and it just works so beautifully because of the dog.
So what type of dogs have you got? So what are sort of the
sorts? Yeah. I mean, mostly there is a lot of retrievers, golden retrievers, Labradors, poodles, but we do have all sorts. We've got Chihuahuas and Great Danes. We've got not too many working dogs. That's probably the one breed, Kelpies and Border Collies, that, they'd prefer to be running and jumping.
And I'm sure Jack Russells.
They can be pretty high energy.
They are. He is very high energy, right? That's what I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine. But he's quite chilled at the same time. But
yes.
Yeah, okay. So there's a whole range. Now, obviously do the dogs come with the volunteers or?
Yes. Yeah. 99% of the time, yes, that's the case. Where volunteers have their own dogs and they come with them, yes.
So now let's talk about the human. Secondary human. No, let's talk about the humans that are involved. How do they become involved in story dogs? What's the process? If anyone's listening and going, I love dogs, I love the sound of this, I know the benefit, how do they get involved?
Yeah. So jump on our website. We have a volunteer information pack. So it's storydogs.org.au on the website, and just have a look at what's involved. Really, it's having the time. So you need about a couple of hours, one day a week, and having a suitable dog, and being in a place where we already have programs set up, or you're willing to set it up in your area. So, and then we guide you through the steps. We'll meet you and your dog. We'll put you through the dog team assessment. We'll do what we call the people training. That's without your dog. It's a half-day course. We show a video. We'll put you into a school. We'll let you see an experienced volunteer. So you sit in with an experienced volunteer to get a feel of how it actually works, and we'll support you throughout the whole process. So, yeah.
And did I read correctly, you're in over 300 schools across Australia?
Absolutely. It's just the demand is huge, and it will get more so now with the learning disruptions with COVID. Kids need us even more. So, yeah, the demand is huge. And yes, we've got over 500 volunteers. It's so exciting.
Over 500 volunteers in over 300 schools. Now, you're a volunteer organisation, is that right?
That's right, yes, yep.
So, Janine, how do you do it? You've got, it's not, what people say, don't work with children or dogs, and you're doing both as well as adults. So how do you do it?
Yeah. We do have two paid employees, myself and another wonderful lady, Catherine, but we do it through generous funding. So we have lots of sponsors. One of our main sponsors is our platinum sponsor, Just for Pets, and they've come on board earlier this year and being an amazing help. So that, donations and dog sponsorships is how we make the pages keep turning. But as for any charity, it's always a struggle, and we just continue, just keep working at it. And our local communities are just so wonderful. So they're very, very supportive. The schools also chip in. So although it's free for any primary school student in Australia, we do ask the school to have a little fundraising day and contribute that way. So, it's always a struggle, the funding side of it.
Which really, I know not-for-profit land and charities, it's always feels like you're asking for, support, but what a worthwhile cause when you've got little kids and we all know, the importance of reading. I know for me, when I was younger, I was always in those, reading challenges, and I loved sitting at home and just reading a book, but it was something my parents instilled in me from when I was really little. I can't remember, never reading a book really. And now I've hopefully instilled that in my children who just love to read. But so for me, it's interesting. I don't understand why, you wouldn't instill a love of reading when you know the benefits of reading. But for some kids, it is really hard. They've got some of them just need that little bit of support, don't they? Just to look at reading a little bit differently.
Yeah, and they don't. Some of the students and children we see don't have support at home. So in our world, our homes are full of books and we encourage it. In some children's world, that's not the case, and they don't get read to every evening, or they struggle to read. So what our program also does is, if they have a pet home, we encourage them to read to their pet. So some students we've been told by the teachers, they say, I went home and I practiced with my pet rabbit so that I could read really well to Buddy when he comes next week. So,
See, that's amazing, because it's giving them a skill they can do at home, and it's not, that's so beautiful. And having witnessed it myself, I've seen it in action, which it is so powerful. And I think that's what schools, if anyone's listening to, this podcast and you're a teacher, which is a lot of my audience, if it's something that you go, I wonder if it would work, it works. You don't need to wonder.
Yes,
it actually
absolutely.
does work. And you've got some pretty big supporters too. I saw that, Graham Bass is one of the acclaimed Australian author, is one of the big supporters. And of course he's written so many books, but the one that really stands out for me with him is Animalia.
Yes.
And it's like the most unbelievably illustrated books, but that was my son's favorite book.
Yes.
Growing up, I think I've read that a gazillion times during his upbringing. How did that come about? That's a pretty big name to get support.
Well, it was interesting. We were at Storyfest at Somerset College on the Gold Coast, and he was one of their authors. And we had a marquee with dogs everywhere, and he was drawn to us. So he couldn't resist coming over and giving our dogs a bit of a pat. And I went, "Oh, Graham Bass, oh, wow."
Do you love what we do?
That's right. So we connected instantly, and it was lovely to meet him and have his support. It's really good because you're right, our family grew up on Animalia as well, and it's a great introductory book. We use it in our program just to go, well, let's look at the pictures. What are all these sea? Let's get the crayfish and the cat, all of the, without knowing that reading is a chore, it becomes fun finding. So we use all sorts of books in that regard.
Yeah. In regards to the books, do you need or do you seek donations for books, or how do you come across your resources?
Yep. So one of our partners that we get our books through is Dimmick's Children's Charities. So they give us a 50% discount on our books, which is just wonderful because we do have specialised books. We choose specific authors that we know, really fun books. They're colourful, they're interesting, they're great to read together. They're not a boring school reader. Sorry, teachers.
Well, let's face it, I have to admit, I look at a lot of readers in schools, and as I'm not a teacher, but I'm an occupational therapist, and I look at some of them, I'm thinking, half the kids wouldn't even know what some of these things are in here anymore. Like they have an old phone or, a fax machine. And I'm like, kids are going to be like, what is that thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really like crazy books, Alpacas with Maracas, Pig the Pug, Alison Lester, Pamela Allen, Mem Fox, they're the staples of our program. And we take books in, and we also use the library at school, or if a student has a particular topic that we find out about, we go, oh, great, well, let's go find a book on motorbikes if that's what you like. Let's try and spark your interest with something that you're interested in.
So if Alison Lester or Mem Fox are listening to this, we are open to
Absolutely.
Just a little byline if any of those authors just mentioned by Janine are listening. Yes. Look, Janine, it's such a delight to be able to talk to you about, the work of Story Dogs, but also, your passion is just so tangible. What's in store for Story Dogs? What is your vision? Because it's so big right now.
Yes, but we are in 350 odd primary schools, but there's 6,000 primary schools in Australia. So our big, audacious, hairy goal is to be in all primary schools. But one of our short-term goals is also to be helping 5,000 children learn to read every week. So we're at about 2,600 children now. So we'd love to step up to that 5,000 nice big round goal, to be helping as many kids as we can.
So led by 2 people and a team of volunteers, you're servicing 2,500 plus children every single week.
That's right. We do have a team of leaders who are also volunteers, but we call them our coordinators. And so there's 60 of them that are around the countryside supporting our dog teams, and they're just amazing people. They go over and beyond every week. So our coordinators are wonderful, wonderful people. So it's not just me, it's a huge, huge team, and it's great fun to be involved in.
Well, I love this because I never realised you were that big. And, I just look and go, we see in schools just this beautiful little puppy and a volunteer that's talking to a child, but the impact, the ripple effect of the work that you're doing at Story Dogs is huge. So I just thank you so much for doing it and supporting the kids at where they need to be supported, in a fun way, because I think so much we're seeing kids' anxiety is increasing. we're seeing that fear, like you said, about, stepping out of their comfort zone. A lot of kids are fearful of making mistakes. And I couldn't imagine life without reading and being able to love reading and, falling to sleep at night with a book in my hand. There's nothing more joyful than that. And, sitting side by side with your child and reading a book. So
absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Well, Janine, you've got me hooked, both dog and book. But thank you so much for being on a Kids Life podcast and just for doing the work that you're doing with our little kids. It's really important. And for parents, before we finish up, who are listening to this, what can they do at home to support learning, how to read or making reading fun at home? What can they do for their own children at home?
Absolutely. Just surround yourself with books. So even if your child can't read, that's okay. Just share a book. Absolutely share a book every day and get them to choose. Have lots of books, get them to choose, take them to the library every day and go, well, let's get 10 books and take them home. And if they only read 2 of those books, it's great. Take the other ones back and change mode. But just keep going. Just keep sharing books, sharing books. And they will have a huge start. If they're not at school, they will have a huge start when they do get to school. But yeah, just share a book every single day.
Such a simple message, isn't it? But so powerful.
It makes such a difference.
Well, thank you, Janine. Thanks so much. So you've been joined today, our listeners, by Janine Sigley, who's the co-founder of Story Dogs here in Australia. And we're just, so thankful for your time. Now, for anybody who is wanting to get involved as a volunteer or even to donate or even as an ambassador for any of the listeners that are here, I will make sure below this episode on all the podcasts, we will link to Story Dogs and all the relevant pages. And we might even put a little video up there, Janine, of the Story Dogs in action that we see on your website, because there's some beautiful real life examples there on the Story Dogs website as well. So storydogs.org.au, but it is all linked below under this episode. So you've been listening to a Kids Life podcast. Janine Sigley, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to a Kids Life podcast. To stay up to date with all new episodes, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you want to know more about the Inclusive Classroom or any of the other programs I provide, please go to angelalockwood.com.au. And until next time, slow down, have fun, and enjoy.